Today on Locked On Canadiens, are we going to see some fun new faces sooner rather than later?
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1046 of Locked On Canadiens. And we thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $150 win or lose. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is Laura Saab, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Scott Matla of Habs Eyes on the Prize. And Scott, how are you doing on this, the day of the total eclipse of the Hab?
I'm doing actually pretty good. Terrible pun of all things aside. Despite the clouds in Buffalo, we got to see glimpses of the partial eclipse through the breaks in the cloud, and then watched it turn to total night here in downtown Buffalo, and watched the streetlights all come on in a row down one of the main drags here in the city. It was legitimately one of the cooler things I've ever seen. I know that everybody's like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" Even without being able to actually see the eclipse proper, the whole moment that went with it was something incredible, and kind of makes up for what was a dreadful game on Sunday night from the Canadiens, where they also got overshadowed and outplayed and left in the dark, and eclipse pun joke here with that. So outside of that, can't complain all that much, honestly.
I honestly, from my perspective, I think it's the game was as to be expected. Again, we were talking about, the decimation of that blue line there, second night of a back-to-back, a somewhat emotional game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they played really well against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It did make sense that it was like a come down, a comeback, or whatever you want to call it. Well, no, comeback is not the right word. I just found that this is the first time, I think, this season that I watched the Rangers play the Habs, and I believed that they were good. And I don't know if it's necessarily the Habs' fault. Sorry, that was the only thing I wanted to say.
No, and the thing is, I listened to the game on the radio while I was driving back from an event in another part of New York yesterday, and all I keep hearing is Primo with a save and Primo with a stop and a big stop here. Just kind of looking at the numbers, it looks like the Canadiens got on the board first, which cool, great, love that. But it was all Kaden Primo, and he held the dam back for as long as he could. The Rangers were really, 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 really good. I'm looking at it period by period here. They had 9 scoring chances in the first period, 5 high danger chances, a 1.29 expected goals, didn't score. The Rangers were, and admittedly, better than the Canadiens. That's, not thinking up for debate here. It's one of the ones that it was close until it wasn't. It was 3-1. The Canadiens got back into it, and then the game just kind of fell over. The power play for the Rangers with Chris Kreider, who spit on the floor, spit at his name, etc., is just better than what the Canadiens could offer here. I don't think I can look at this game and be like, wow, Kaden Primo was terrible, all these goals and everything. I think he did about as well as he could possibly hope for someone in this game. Coming off a game where he had to make a bunch of stops when he came in relief of Samuel Montembeault on Saturday, 37 even strength shots in all situations here. The Rangers had 46. The Canadiens had 28. The Canadiens only had 1 extra shot in another format of play besides 5-on-5, which is not good enough for things. It is what it is. This is a game that the Rangers should have run over the Canadiens in, missing 2 top 4 defensemen, coming off a highly intense game on Saturday where they also kind of got their pride damaged a little. And I think some players, stood out. That top line continues to be a really good kind of stand-in. And again, they are top the expected goals chart here, and everyone else was really, really bad. Fourth line got beat up. The bottom six got beat up. The defense, everyone kind of got beat up in this, except for the top line and somehow Jaden Struble in this game. Uh, I,
Somehow Cayden Prime.
I don't know how. I'm looking at the numbers here. He played a lot. He was the second most used defenseman behind Mike Matheson, if I'm looking at my chart here and everything correctly. So they trusted him and he played well. He got rewarded for it. I hope that they've taken some lessons from these games and can apply it to the Flyers coming to the Bell Center tomorrow. In that the Flyers are a team fighting for their playoff life again. We've talked about this ad nauseum for the last month here. The Habs got to be ready for that. The Flyers are going to come out desperate in this game. They can't really afford to lose anymore. They're in danger of falling out of the playoff picture entirely. And as I look at it, they are out of the playoff picture right now. They are fifth in the wild card. Detroit holds the last spot with 84. Tampa has one with 93. The Penguins have 83 points. The Capitals have 83 points. The Flyers have 83 points. And somehow, improbably right behind them, the New Jersey Devils, who have not yet been eliminated, and the Buffalo Sabres, who have also not yet been eliminated. The Habs get to be the fun person who can spoil a lot of persons' funds for the Islanders and the Flyers here. Take that frustration from these last two games where you maybe got bullied a little bit, got beat up a little bit, had your pride hurt. This is your opportunity to take that out. And I know people want to talk losses and tanking and all that other stuff. As of right now, I believe the Habs sit in the fifth overall, have the fifth best odds at first overall. And I'm looking at Tankathon, and they do. They played okay, lost, other teams won, and now they're in better position. Wasn't the prettiest weekend, but long-term, probably far from the worst thing that could have happened to this team.
Right. And I think that's the thing. Like, we've known all along that this team would have a top 10 spot. I don't think that's ever been in question. Like, even in the moments of doubt, people are like, I don't think it's going to be sustainable enough that they're going to be, picking 12th or 13th overall or whatever. The Flyers are an interesting case study because they're kind of in disarray, which is interesting in that today we were talking in the group chat about John Tortorella and a quote that he seemed to be defending his team while also and taking responsibility himself while also throwing his team under the bus, which was quite interesting.
Special.
It's a Torts special. And it was like, he was saying like, oh, I own this, blah, 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 but these players haven't been good. Which, the Flyers are a team, like we saw the last time they rolled around and came to the Bell Center, like we saw that the Canadiens were able to capitalize against their doubts, their mistakes, their sloppiness in some cases. I do think the Canadiens do have the ability to do that. Like, if you want the team to lose, that's fine for you. But from a hockey player perspective, that's not why they get out on the ice. But you can take advantage of the Flyers. You can have, last time it was quite fun, that game. The Canadiens played in a way that made us really enjoy the game. So, like, for me, that's all I'm hoping for. With respect to the Islanders, it's going to be another game where it's like, please just nobody get hurt. Please.
Well, again, we've said it enough times now. They're going to try and kill Brendan Gallagher in this game. Like, he threw what is an egregious cheap shot, and I'm not one of those guys like, you got to fight for everything, but like, this is one of the ones that I look at and be like, someone's going to grab you and you're going to answer for it. And Brendan Gallagher, I think, has been around the game long enough to know that he's going to have a target on his back. And that should be the end of it, I am hoping. Out of everything, I am hoping that is the case. But because it is Patrick Waugh and it is the Islanders, and they are, and I say this with much love as someone who loves how much they infuriate other teams, kind of punchy a little bit. It's the kind of game that could very easily spiral. They have a team that is loaded with that kind of guy. And I know that's later on in the week, and the Flyers are here first, and everybody's angry at that. But the Habs are just continuing their blood feuds down the stretch of the season here. Florida, Tampa, Toronto, Philadelphia for some reason, the Islanders, they have one more game against the Senators. And then Detroit, who they hold Detroit's playoff chances in their hands. If the Habs decide they want to play the best two games of their season and the last two games of the year, a whole lot of people in Detroit are going to be a whole lot of angry at the Montreal Canadiens at that point.
I agree. And honestly, like I'm kind of over the season already, and I'm really, really excited to just start talking draft and prospects and off season and next year's progress. But you know what? Next year's progress can start right away with potential new faces in Laval. And that's going to be our next segment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It is playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. I don't know about you, Scott, but for me, I always want to bet that the Toronto Maple Leafs will egregiously be kicked out embarrassingly out of the offseason. And you know what? I have not been wrong so far. And right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, whether you bet on the Leafs to lose or not. That is $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so I want to remind everybody to please play responsibly if you are into betting, and be careful. Also, we should be careful to be watching Laval very, very closely. Scott, what's going on?
So nothing currently.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to get everybody's hopes up on things, but from the time the games ended on Sunday in the OHL, just kind of looking at things, I was texting with our friend from Lockdown Blue Jackets who had a prospect playing for the Ottawa 67s, and he was asking me, "Hey, is Florian Jacki just like his brother?" And I'm like, "Is he currently trying to punch somebody?" And the answer was yes. Brantford, the Bulldogs, were eliminated in 6 games against Ottawa. They are out of the OHL playoffs. And also Owen Sound was eliminated by the powerhouse Saginaw Spirit, which should free up potentially 2 current Montreal Canadiens prospects to come to PTOs or whatever it may be. I'm not expecting Cedric Guindon to potentially get one. They may just have him as a black ace, as like a fill-in in practice right now, and they're going to roll with the lineup they have, and he's a spare body for this lineup. But the name I'm most intrigued by is going to be Florian Jacki of the Brantford Bulldogs, formerly the Hamilton Bulldogs, coming out of the OHL here because he's bigger body, plays a physical style of game, someone that Jean-Francois who really likes in
And
his
the
bottom
Laval
six.
Rocket themselves, like, right? Like, that's the kind of player they love playing with.
And that's the thing is I look at their 4th line right now. They just called up Yakov Novak from the Lions in the ECHL. He's their leading scorer, set franchise records this year for goal scoring. I think they're bringing him in to give them just a little bit more depth punch there. They lost Brandon Gignac to injury over the weekend here. I absolutely can see Florian Jacki being one of the guys they signed. He turns 20 in a month and a half I have my months right here in the end of June, which would make him eligible for the AHL next year because they drafted him as an overage player coming out of Hamilton in the draft last year. And I think this is going to be one of those like trial runs for him, that if they bring him in and he performs well or so shows that he can hang, I can see them signing him because they very clearly like this. They liked him as a player. He went from 13 goals and 12 assists to 34 goals and 31 assists, over a point per game. Yes, an older player, but at the same time showing progression that you want to see. It wasn't stagnation. It wasn't anything else. He really kind of took that next stride that you would want from him as a player. So,
And I wonder if this is the kind of thing where, and again, you don't want to be the person to be like, this player is exactly like his brother. But there is a parallel situation in that the Canadiens did take a chance on the brother, even though he was undrafted. And he really rose to the occasion and was like, this is like, I'm going to show you what I've got. Whereas maybe like Florian as well kind of went from, oh, I'm an afterthought to, oh, I actually got drafted much higher than I expected. And I'm really going to show that I am worth that leap of faith, right? Like, and I don't know if that's a narrative that like I necessarily want to be peddling until we see what he can do in the NHL as well. But I think this is a really good step. I feel like he has, instead of increasing the amount of doubt in our minds, instead what he's done is he's kind of taken control of his own development and sort of been like, all right, I'm going to show what I've got here. I'm gonna dispel the notion that I was a waste of a pick.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is that he's someone that I think can step in and really play at a professional level. I'm very curious what his continued progression looks like as a player. I admittedly didn't get to watch a ton of the OHL games this year, but you don't make those kind of jumps without improvements. I'm seeing more of him on the score sheet highlights and, oh, he had a 2-point night, a 3-point night. He had a bunch of points in this game versus he got kicked out of a game. Oh, here he is in a fight. Here's a huge check. It's great that he throws these hits and that he's a physical presence. It's really good to see that next level of his game is evolving. And we saw this with his brother as well. He went from he's the nastiest dude in the league, doesn't put up a ton of points, to an offensive guy, still not like crazy high points, but developing that side of his game, who never lost that mean streak. And I look at the way the next 2 weeks of the Rocket season can go. 2 games against Belleville, 2 games against Cleveland. They're going to be feisty. They're going to be angry. And if they get in the playoffs, they're likely playing the Toronto Marlies, a team that they've had nasty series, whatever, with all year. If there's someone you're going to want in there, you want a guy who can bang in some goals. Ugly goals count the same as the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Connor McDavid weaves through everybody, scores a goal. It's the same thing as Brendan Gallagher scoring one off of his ass. It still counts as one. One's just a lot cooler to look at. So I would really love to see that. I think Cedric Guindon has upside as someone who could come into this organization and maybe surprise a little bit. I think he's the forgotten kind of junior prospect, but at the same time, it's understandable because he's not a guy that has sizzle to his game.
Right.
And I realize that sounds a little unfair. He turns 20 in 13 days, also eligible for an AHL contract next year. He had 69 nice points last year in 68 games, 57 and 68 this year, 68 or 59 and 68 his first year in the OHL. And part of this year is he was missing Colby Barlow on his team for a good chunk of the season. Barlow played 18 less games than he did. They were on a line together last year, and they put up a bunch of points that way. I'd be interested to see. I'm surprised that they haven't announced anything yet, especially because I believe the Rocket are playing on Thursday and Saturday this week, which is weird to me. I don't love that, but I would think they want to get these guys signed, acclimated, and then joining the team before they get on the road to Cleveland on what I assume will be Wednesday morning. They're not going to travel that far on game day, but I assume that if we're going to get news on it, it would either be the end of today or early tomorrow morning and have these guys there.
Right. So this episode could be obsolete by early tomorrow morning. And the Habs love to do that. They love to do the 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Announcements. So we'll watch out for that. Scott, was there anyone else that we should be keeping an eye on? Or can we move on to our 3 up, 3 down? Because I feel like you have a down you really want to talk about this week.
For one thing, Oliver Kapanen and Adam Engstrom in the playoffs in Europe have been incredible. Kapanen is leading his team in scoring. He's currently one of the hottest players in Liga right now.
And we haven't talked about him at all this season.
He was the forgotten man in Europe with David Reinbacher, with Bogdan Konyushkov being that popular, and with Adam Engstrom being the topic du jour. Oliver Kapanen has been really, really good. He's someone that I need to get Patrick Bexell's input on what his contract situation looks like, because he could be a sneaky good ad for the Rocket next season. Obviously, Patrick on Twitter at Zeb_Habs is your guy for that. You don't want to miss his threads on those games because he sees everything as he goes.
Yes, absolutely. Not just a great follow, but great Abs Eyes on the Prize or the Absent Minded podcast. Definitely want to be keeping an eye on that. In the meantime, we do have our weekly 3 up, 3 down. We did move it to the Tuesday episode just because we had so much to talk about over the weekend. And that is coming up next right here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Let me tell you about Sleeper. We're almost done with the season. We kind of know already who's making the playoffs and who's going to miss out. And regardless of where we are, I do want to remind everybody that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick some players and predict whether they will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win 100 times your cash on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Canadiens fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. It's time for a 3 up and 3 down. And Scott, do we want to start with our down first real quick and get it out of the way? Because we have some things to say.
We do. I've completely forgotten what my down list was going to be. I was just going to
the Coyotes Arena thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, not to kick someone but they're down, but it already sounds like this is going sideways after they assumed they were absolutely going to be getting this arena. It was a slam dunk and it's a done deal. And hockey's staying in Arizona and just I feel so bad for fans. They deserve so much better than whatever this current mess that is going on is because the mayor of Scottsdale says we cannot support this because we don't have the groundwater to like help take care of this arena and everything else there. And it just sounds outright like they're just saying, no, this is not going to be a thing that happens. Admittedly, I don't know if he has the same sway over being the Phoenix area, or if that is one large metro area. Someone can please inform me on that. Just don't be rude about it. I don't know anything about the American Southwest except that it is hot and an affront to God. This whole Coyotes thing, it just makes me sad for fans. But then I see that, the son of the GM starts tweeting on their Twitter account, and then I realize I don't really care all that much about whether they stay or go at this point. But
it's Mickey Mouse as it gets.
You have the guy, the prospective Utah owner putting out asks for names and all these other things. Teams people, buying groups are meeting in Houston and everything. The Sharks aren't circling the boat in the chummed water yet, but there are fins on the horizon for this. And it's one of the longest running soap operas in sports next to the Leafs versus reality. And I kind of just want it to be done and over with at some point. I want their fans to either have the team and security with that to stop whatever this nonsense that happens every 4 or 5 years at this point, or to just be done and over with. We're ripping off the Band-Aid. We're done here. No more. It's getting tiring. Yeah. I like poking fun at it, but at this point, it's like, stop it. I just want this to be over and done with. I can't keep watching this happen anymore.
Absolutely. Like for me, it's how much more of this are the fans supposed to take? And ownership is really what dictates how things go. And honestly, I don't have any faith in this organization. And I just feel bad for the fans, like you said. All right, is it time to say good things?
It's absolutely time to say good things.
Let's say good things.
Well, I do want to shout out Kaden Primo. I think based on the situation he was thrust into this weekend, coming in cold against a Toronto team that was suddenly flying on all cylinders, performed well there. And a 5-2 scoreline might be flattering for what the Canadiens faced against the Rangers there. I thought he was fantastic in that game. I haven't looked at what his season numbers are up to yet, but I'm doing so right now. As far as guys who have gone out of their way to kind of put themselves in the best situation for next season, Cayden Primo's done a really good job. Sub 3.00 goals against, 9-10 save percentage, 2 shutouts, 8-9-2 this year. Honestly, you could do a lot worse when in previous years, 849, 868, 852, and then in 2 games a handful of years ago, 931. He's been really good this year after being really shaky at the NHL level and even starting out shaky this year. His last couple starts here against the Rangers, 911 save percentage, perfect against Toronto with 18 saves, 824 against Tampa Bay, but that game kind of got out of hand. 967 against Philly, 973 against Seattle. 7th round pick, 199th overall. You could do a lot worse than getting a cromulent 1B backup in the NHL for that, especially one who isn't even 25 years old yet. Really, really impressed with what he's put together this season, and it allows them to let Jakub Dobiš cook a little bit more. It gives Jacob Fowler sometimes, Quentin Miller some time. You have a guy here that if Montembeault slides, this might be a guy you can slide in there a little bit more. It's still Montembeault's net, but I feel a little bit more confident than I used to when I saw it was a Cayden Primo start night.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That has absolutely turned things around. Like we were worried about what the question marks were going to be this season. And obviously with the trade of Jake Allen, like a lot of it got cleared up, but Cayden Primo did everything he could to put himself in the best position, as you said, for next year. Another person who put himself for a really good position for next year. Obviously there was not a doubt. It's not like, that he wasn't going to be playing, is Juraj Slafkovsky. And I can't stop saying enough good things about him. I can't, he's been like literally on our up list for, I think, like 18 weeks straight, or if not more.
He continues to do so many impressive things that he's developing into this really deft playmaker. And that to me is an incredible thing for this Canadiens team. I know we want the goal scorer and everything. Suzuki's developing more of that scoring side. He's always been a very good scorer. We know Caufield is capable of it, but Slafkovsky becoming a really strong facilitator is great news for this team. I'm not saying he's going to become a dominant two-way guy, but we're seeing the instincts and the placement and just the swagger to try things. And I really appreciate that about him. If he's ever off the top line, I'm less worried about that. Yeah, it might take some time to get in a rhythm with like a Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook or whomever else, but I'm less worried about it because he has the confidence that he can start doing this now versus other games where it looked like he was lost in years before. He's been so good. I'm hoping he can hit that 50-point plateau in this final handful of games here, because I think after his struggles in the first year and his struggle, he basically didn't put up points for the first like quarter or third of the season here. And then it's just been on fire since December, basically. And I'm really hoping that he can crest that 50-point plateau in a really strong bounce back sophomore year.
Absolutely. And then finally, who do we always praise? Actually, I am going to praise Nick Suzuki, but I also want to praise Cole Caufield. Last couple of games, I've really seen a lot more noise from Cole Caufield.
I was going to shout out Mike Matheson as well. He's in the top 7 for scoring by defensemen in the NHL this year.
Not bad.
And he's on pace. He's already set a new career high in assists and everything. He's closing in on 50 assists. He's doing a lot of, I'm trying to get the points pulled up here on NHL.com.
And while you do that, I'm just going to mention also an honorable mention to the Montreal Canadiens penalty kill. Power play, not enamored still, but penalty kill, honestly, truly has improved. I thought it was hopeless, and they've improved so much. I don't even know what to say at this point.
Mike Matheson ranks tied for 9th in the NHL with scoring amongst defensemen, with Rasmus Dahlin, who has 19 goals on the season, which is wild. Mike Matheson has 47 assists, which puts him 9th there behind Josh Morrissey. He has, like I said, he has 57 points. 60 points is really within reach there. That's with a handful. He's played 77 games this year. And I know that he has struggled, and 27 of his 57 points have come on the power play, but he is a very good facilitator at even strength. I look at his pass to Alex Newhook against the Rangers that set up that goal, and it's a perfect seam pass. I would love for him to have someone take some of that power play pressure off of him. Let him run the second unit for, 30, 40 seconds versus a minute and a half on the top unit. And we might be able to get to see more of his strengths there when he's not lead on the penalty kill, lead on the power play, lead at 5-on-5. But as far as trades go, getting Mike Matheson for declining Jeff Petrie at this point is incredible work by Kent Hughes. That I wasn't crazy about it at the time, but Mike Matheson has really come a long way in being probably one of the best defensemen the Canadiens have had in the last decade at this point.
Right. And we do have to point out that it is a pretty low bar, not to be mean.
All respect to PK Subban and to Shea Weber and to Jeff Petrie and to Andre Markov, but Mike Matheson putting up as many points in the season that Subban did in his prime with a better team around Subban than right now, I would say that this is not meant to disparage any of those, but man, he's having a really good season that gets overshadowed because we're talking about Suzuki and Caufield and Slavkovsky, but man, Mike Matheson just keeps putting up points, and we are really proud of Emily's husband.
We are proud of Emily's husband. All right, and that will do it for today's episode for us, but we will be back tomorrow with a recap of the game. Hopefully nobody gets hurt. And as always, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, LO_Canadiens. You can also find us on YouTube, obviously. And if you want to send us mailbag questions, please send them to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Tell us your stories. Send us your questions. We also have mailbag questions from last week that we didn't tackle that we will be tackling on tomorrow's episode.